Hey everybody, it's Dr. Rumsey. For Project 3, I decided to go ahead and create a lecture video instead of trying to have a synchronous meeting. I found that the synchronous meetings are not attended very well because you guys are busy. And also, when you're watching this, I will likely be on my way to Georgia for my niece's wedding. So, video this time. So you might have noticed that Project 2 is pretty intense, right? There were a lot of big things that you had to do. Well, I positioned it in the course in the way that I did on purpose because I find that the heavier load of coursework is best completed by about week 12. And then the remaining part of the class, we're into Project 3, is a little bit less intense. It's not that it's going to be less work. Some of you might find it more work, but I find that the assignments that are ahead of you are a lot more accessible and they don't take as much time to sort of understand. So there's two different things you're going to be doing for Project 3. One is something called a policy assignment, and two is a set of instructions. Now, most of you kind of know intuitively or actually what a set of instructions are. I'm going to talk about those in a minute, but a lot of you don't think too much about policy. Policy gets lumped under sort of human resources, HR, a lot, and not so much the kind of writing that you'll do on the job. However, the point of this assignment is that policy manuals and instruction manuals are a huge part of your daily life as an employee at pretty much any company. And so that means that I want to make sure that you think about things that might impact you as an employee, and then also practice sort of writing correspondence about policy issues back and forth from HR, that sort of thing, so that you just have practice with it. It's the kind of thing that probably fits more under business writing than technical writing, but again, I think it's important for your future. So in this case, and also I say here, we're trying to ensure that our backsides are covered legally and ethically. When you put out a new product with a set of instructions, there are legal and ethical ramifications if it's done poorly. The same thing goes for policy. You might find that the policies work just fine for you when you're single, but perhaps at some point you have a partner and you have kids. All of a sudden, the same policies don't work so well. So again, you just need to be aware of those things and know how to be a good employee. So the audience for this set of documents is going to be same as it's been, where you're thinking of your peers in class as your colleagues and me as your supervisor. You're in 234, we really try and keep the audience sort of close, and each of the projects is distinct. If you go on to English 421, you'll find that you have a much broader audience that incorporates technology professionals, your engineering and computer science senior design professors, and so on and so forth. But for now, for 234, we kind of keep it just in-house. The set of instructions, however, is going to be for someone who is outside the company or product or user that you usually would write for. So for example, you're not going to be able to write a set of instructions for something that is so obvious to you that anyone could figure it out. You also can't write a set of instructions that's so obtuse that no one else can read them, and they'd have to already know, say, how to program in C++, otherwise they would never understand your instruction set. So we'll get to more of that later. So the content and form, they're going to be documents as before, and then IEEE formatting. One thing to keep in mind is that if you borrow graphics, you need to cite them in the exact same way that you cite other sources. This comes as a surprise to most students because you've grown up in a culture that borrows stuff on the internet and mixes media all the time. Well, when you're publishing something, when you're putting something out there for your employees, you need to actually say where you got it. And again, it's an academic exercise. So make sure you do those things. The instructional text is going to be much more visual than the text that you've done before. It's going to have probably almost half and half in terms of graphics and written content, which is also similar to the kinds of things you're going to be doing on the job. The policy documents are going to be documents of various forms, which I'll talk about here in a minute. Okay, so the policy assignment. Procedures, training manuals, employee handbooks are common types of manuals that get used in any workplace, particularly technology workplaces. You're going to find that My husband interned, back in the late 90s, he interned with Motorola down in Texas. And the first day they thunked down the, training materials or procedures, employee handbook, what have you. And he had to learn, pages upon pages of material for how to correspond within the company, all the acronyms that they used, and those sorts of things. So every workplace is going to be different, right? Usually the documents I'm talking about, the employee handbook and that sort of thing, are kind of invisible. And what I mean by invisible is if, unless they apply to you or you've run into a problem where you're up against a policy you don't like or it doesn't agree with you, you're probably not even going to notice they're there. If they're done well, no one's going to know who wrote them, and they're just going to operate as if they've always been. The problem comes when there's policies in place that infringe on someone's rights, when your life circumstances change, as I mentioned before, and suddenly those policies are kind of up for debate. Okay, so there's going to be a series of scenarios that I give you. 2 are borrowed from older textbooks and one that I wrote myself, and you're going to pick one. Okay, in each of the policies, there's a scenario of sort of common current issues that might come up in a workplace, and you're going to find and analyze sample policy manuals related to your chosen scenario. You're going to write a memo as if you're the employee sort of complaining about the policy, and then you're going to write a memo back to them with the new policy as if you're the supervisor. Okay, and so down here you can see the requirements laid out for you. Let me show you really quick what the policies look like. Hang on just one second. Okay, so these are going to be posted as a separate document in the weekly folder that corresponds with this. The first one, it's a civil engineering associate. Basically, for 5 years, it's been kind of the old boys club, and for their Friday, meetings, they all go to lunch, as sort of a working lunch, at a place called Coasters. And it's a place that has attractive women dressed in not a whole lot who are the servers. You can imagine what the correlating type of restaurant would be here in Fort Wayne. The problem is that they are trying to expand their firm, and they've hired a woman who's a pretty new graduate, and she is top of the line. They had to work really hard to get her because she was actually it was a competitive job search. And so she's gone to a couple of these lunches and she's really uncomfortable, and rightly so, right? So how does she approach this? So what you're going to do is find that sample policy manual, right? Write a summary and analysis of the policy. It's not going to be a long document. You're going to write a memo as if you are Elizabeth writing to Robert, right? Saying this is the problem. And then you're going to write a memo in response as if you are Robert, making a change to the policy manual accordingly. Okay. The second one is about Henry. He's a biomedical engineer, and basically he is gay, and he's not ashamed of being gay, but it's not something he really talks about a lot at work. So Facebook obviously is not the most current social media out there, but his boss is not really up with the times and has decided that he wants to move certain aspects of the company business onto Facebook, right? Where announcements are going to be put there, and they want everyone to sort of friend each other. So Henry does not necessarily want that part of his life to be public knowledge in his job, not because he's embarrassed, just because it's none of their business. So how does he approach this in terms of adjusting what that communication policy is? So in this case, again, you're going to find a sample policy manual that talks about it, write a quick summary of that. You're going to write a memo as if you're Henry saying to his boss, this is a problem. And then you're going to write a memo back from John, the boss, to everyone about a change to communication. Okay? Different social media policy to be implemented. The third scenario is in relation to parental leave for people who are having children. And this might not be you right now, but it could very well be you in the future. And so Arthur is someone, and he is pretty proud of his company. They employ 25% of their employees are female, and they've really updated their maternity leave. They've wanted to in the past, but currently it's only unpaid maternity leave according to FMLA, which is kind of a crap thing that a lot of companies do, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. So they hired a new human resources director, and she's really wanting to have a more cutting edge and policy regarding maternity leave so that they can attract more females because the company's expanding. The problem is that she's focused on maternity leave, and Arthur finds that his wife is expecting, and he would like to have paternity leave. Also, he knows of a couple in the company who are gay, and they are hoping to adopt. So could the two dads receive any kind of paternity leave in the same way? So again, you're going to find a sample policy manual. You're going to write as Arthur to the new HR director, and then you're going to write as the HR director back to the employees, updating the policy. Hope you get the idea. So for that last one, I thought it might be helpful to see a couple of examples online of what I'm talking about, since it's sort of hard to get your head wrapped around it. So if you Google just like sample employee policy manuals, here's one from Microsoft Word, and you can find down here that their sample for parental leave is basically non-existent. Unpaid parental leave is the going trend in America, and we are one of the only developed nations that still does unpaid maternity leave. You can look up the research. It does not benefit us in any way to skip this particular benefit to employees. Okay, so here's a sample. It doesn't do a great job of explaining things, but it's a sample. Okay, then to give you a little bit of perspective, my sister-in-law is vice president and president of something at Cummins. And so I looked up what their parental leave, and this is back from 2011, and they've introduced, back in 11, we're talking a decade ago, they updated their parental leave policy to be 6 months. They had 15 weeks, which is unheard of, but they upped it to 6 months. That is how cutting edge their company is, and that frankly should be the standard that all companies should reach for. Okay, so that gives you an idea of where to find the kinds of things you're looking for. You can find the sample document, and then you can find a specific company that's actually done a better job if the sample document doesn't suit you. Okay, so that gives you a little information about the policy manual. Okay. The second thing you're going to be doing is an instructional text. Now, I have a bit of a PowerPoint to show you about instructions. Most of you kind of know what they are, and you're going to be creating a set. Okay, here is a little, I don't do a lot of PowerPoint, and I could click the button to make this expand on the screen, but the problem if I do that is that the video doesn't quite work with it. So what you're going to notice here, the first slide, okay, it's sort of a classic joke. This is one of the most simple instruction manuals that you can imagine, right? It's the one that's on the hand dryers at McDonald's, and it has been edited in a humorous way to receive bacon. And who of us does not need more bacon in our lives, right? So that's a humorous one, but it's not, I mean, it's a set of instructions, right? It's telling someone how to behave, how to act, right? To do a task. Okay, so here's the next one, and this is a real set of instructions from Pottery Barn. A friend gave me years ago. In figure 1, you'll notice they have parts A and B, A being the chair, B being the cushion for the chair, and you place it on the chair, and you're done. That is technically a set of instructions. Obviously, it's ridiculous. Okay, a little more elaborate would be putting together a chair. This one has all of the parts list here along this side, and then a graphic that I think might help some people put it together, but honestly, you kind of have to go with your gut on some of this to figure out exactly what it is that's going on. It's a little oversimplified. And then there's things like how to use your Comcast remote. I don't use Comcast anymore because, well, it's Comcast, but this might look more familiar to you. This is the kind of set of instructions that comes with a new technology device. Sometimes they're really good, a lot of times they're really bad. Either way, it's a very, very tiny print, and you get the idea. Okay, so generally instructions need to be highly visual. Okay, so graphics and diagrams or screen captures, if you're going to do something regarding a computer technology, you need to have about equal amounts of those as written text. It's kind of a 1-to-1 ratio almost. Some people actually end up, excuse me, some people end up with more graphics than they do text, but either way you get the idea. Okay, so once you've decided the task that you want to create a set of instructions for, and this could be something at work, it can be something at home, it kind of just depends on who you are and what your circumstances are. My recommendation is that the first thing you should do is start out by writing down every single step that it takes to perform the task. Don't get involved with graphics at this point, just write down what it takes. Make sure that you number the steps that it takes to get from point A to point B, and then only put one step per number, right? So number the task. You guys like lists, this is your chance to create a list. And as you know, lists are a really good way of getting a lot of information across in a really systematic and organized fashion. So start with just the tasks, okay? Well, come on. There, okay. So the second thing that you ought to do is to think about the instruction set still in writing, and what is it that you are assuming about your user when you write this set of instructions, okay? Are you assuming that the user knows way more than is necessary, or that they are an absolute beginner? And you need to explain each step in detail, but you don't want to treat them as if they're, quote unquote stupid. So you have to be respectful, and there's a balance there. So consider that you are trying to write something that's highly technical for other electrical engineering technology people, okay? Other engineers or technicians. You could write at a different level than if you are trying to write a set of instructions for someone who is brand new to computers to do whatever the task is, right? And so you have got to really think about your end user and what expectations you have for their abilities, and not overshoot and not undershoot. So once you've written all the necessary steps, and you've gone through and thought about your end user, that you're not overreaching or underreaching in terms of the difficulty level, you're going to find or create illustrations and visuals to go with each step. Sometimes you might have 3 steps that go with one image. Maybe you have a computer screen and you're going to have 3 arrows that are numbered, and that's a single image. You get the idea. But what is it that the user needs to see in order to perform this specific task? So if we go back to slide 2, right, the Pottery Barn instructions, do people really need this set of instructions? No. Why it's included? Don't even understand. It's Pottery Barn, who knows, right? And it's expensive. So this would be unnecessary. This one's not enough, right? And so they kind of assume too much on the part of the user, and their graphics and their instructions don't measure up to what they need. Okay? And so what do they need to see to be able to get from point A to point B? So basically, the visuals need to align with the corresponding step. So once you have visuals to go with each one, and those can be borrowed from the internet if you cite where you got them. They can also be created by you by doing screen captures if you're at a computer screen, by someone taking pictures if you're doing something in changing the oil in your car, or doing a tune-up to your snowblower because it just snowed a foot today and our snowblower is barely functioning, to give you an indication of when I'm putting this video together. But then you got to align things, right? And we've looked at chapter 8 before in terms of where, like, document design and the CARP principles, contrast, alignment, repetition, proximity. So document design comes into play here, where you want to make sure that someone using your set of instructions doesn't have to flip back and forth to a diagram and the actual written instructions. They should be aligned. And then make sure the visuals clearly show the desired action, that are large enough or cropped well. So if you do a screen capture, you don't give them the entire screen. You zero in on the part that you want them to click on, that sort of thing. Okay, and then the layout of all of these things matters, as I've said. And so you can review the CARP principles and document design in chapter 8. Okay, so that takes care of talking about what instructions are and kind of what I'm expecting of you. I would say, oops, pardon me, that went the wrong way. Okay, so instructions are one of the key types of writing that is exclusive to technical writing. So whereas policy can get used by business, business writing, quote unquote, instructions are almost exclusively considered technical writing. And there is a very good chance that you are going to have to put together some sort of instructions at some point in time in your job. It may not be this carefully, documented point A to point B kind of thing I'm asking you for. It might be almost exclusively pictures. You may be tasked with redesigning a particular widget in your company, and then you have to come up with the instructions for usability for the rest of the employees. You just don't know what you're headed into. So this is one of those tasks that I find it kind of fun, again, because there's pictures, right? No, I'm just kidding. It's nice when things are visual and also lists. And I think that you're going to appreciate doing this here toward the end of semester when things are getting kind of tired. So I would like to see you create a set of instructions that's related to your chosen major. If you are in if you're in a department, if I have English majors taking this, then you and I can talk about what to do. But it's helpful if you really use this to sort of think about your future career and the kinds of instruction manuals you'll be doing there. So I give you a minimum of 20 steps and a minimum of 6 graphics. So we're looking at least 8 pages, probably 6 to 8 pages, because graphics are going to take up half pages some of the time in terms of length. You get the idea, I hope. The other thing is you need to kind of consider what your user needs to get from point A to point B. Make sure you include safety issues or warning labels, a parts list. I mean, all of those things are going to go together. I probably will put together more information about instructions, or you can certainly email me and ask questions between now and when this is due. As always, my contact information is rumsey.s@pfw.edu, and I think I will go ahead and stop the video now. If you need me, you know how to find me. Take care.